Morning, Gospel Life Church. Hope all is going well on this sunny week as we come halfway through the week, having come off of Sunday's message from the reminder of God's faithfulness. I want to encourage us today from another passage of Scripture, another book of the Bible, 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 down through, I'm going to take it down to verse 11. I've preached on these passages before. They could be very helpful. I come to this passage via some influences, some things that I've been reading. I read an interesting article last night from The Atlantic, just talking about ways that our eschatology, believe it or not, shapes how we are doing things. What we think about the end might shape the way that we respond today. And then a book that I finished reading, we got at the conference that we were at last week, called Love Your Church. Great little book, helpful book, actually something that I'll recommend to every member, just to remind you of, it says, let's see, eight great things about being a church member. Helpful reminders, things that I need to hear, and I'm sure anyone that jumps into a church like our church, to remind you as a member. But he, within this book, brought my attention to a passage that I've always appreciated, always loved, always enjoyed. First Peter chapter 4, context, eschatology, end times. Things are at the end. He says in chapter 4, verse 7, the end of all things is at hand. So the nearness of Christ's return, the nearness of all the promises being completely fulfilled, finding their fulfillment, even our very salvation at the end, the judgment of the world, all these things is at hand. Any moment could happen. As of course, as Paul reminds us, First Thessalonians, thief of the night type language, day of the Lord. You don't know when it's going to happen. There's signs that you can look for, but you really don't know the day that the Lord's going to return and usher in what we would normally call as the end times. And so Peter tells us that that's at hand. So what should we do? Well, most people panic. Right? I mean, you look at the world that we're in today, a lot of people are like, we're closer than we ever were to the return of Christ. And I always say, of course we are, because we're a day later. But there are a lot of things that are scary in people's minds. Inflation, war, rumors of war over in China, another election cycle. Are we going to last as a nation? And so there's a lot of feeling of angst, even amongst believers. And a lot of people saying, well, we're in the end times. This is the end. I mean, could it get any worse? But that's not a call to panic. That's not what Peter calls us to. Rather, the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, and his response is pretty simple: be self controlled and sober minded for the sake of your prayers. The call of eschatology, the call that the reality of the end times is near, is not to panic. It's not to live in such a way that, this world doesn't matter. Rather, it's a call to be sober. I love what the book says. It says, eschatology, our understanding of last things, should it make us fanatical, but faithful? Should make us fanatical, but faithful. Be sober minded. Be focused on the things that God's called you here. Get clear in your thinking. And he says in verse 7, be self controlled so that you pray effectively, so that you think effectively, so that you walk effectively. And so be faithful. Verse 8, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. God's going to return. So you know what you need to do. Lord's going to return. So you know what you need to do. Love one another. Pray. Be sober in your praying. Pray correctly. Don't let the panic of the situation be that which drives your prayer, but rather be sober in your thinking. Have clear thinking about how you pray. And then he says in verse 9, show hospitality to one another without grumbling. Have each other over. Show hospitality. Take care of one another. Take care of strangers. Take care of your neighbors. See how you can help them out. Be faithful, not fanatical. And then verses 10 through 11, as each have received a gift, use it to serve one another as good to whoever speaks is one who speaks oracles of God. Whoever, in order that in everything, God may be glorified in Jesus Christ. You want to end is near, you be faithful. How do you be faithful? Use the gifts that God's called you within this church with ministering to one another. Use them to build up. If God's given you speaking ability, what are you doing to teach other people, whether it's in your personal life or another way? If God's given you a chance to serve, How are you rearranging your time to make it a point to serve those around you? And then he says, to him be glory and dominion forever and ever. And you want to talk about eschatology forever and ever. He's going to get the glory. So start doing it now. So I hope this week finds you ready to serve. Yes, I think the Lord will return at any moment, but let that not make you fanatical, but faithful to what God's called you. Hope you have a wonderful week in the Lord. Look forward to worshiping together on Sunday. Reminder that we have Jeff Brown coming as a missionary speaker, someone who's faithfully served the Lord. He'll be preaching as well, an opportunity to hear the word from him. I'm excited about that. We're going to have a new song that we're going to do together. So it'll be a great time of fellowship. Neat to see baptism last week. Trust the Lord, continue on in the Lord, be faithful to his calling. God bless you.